Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to this webinar on how to write good applications using storytelling techniques. I'm Jenny Kutsamarku, Head of Unit for Communication and Knowledge Activities at the urbact Secretariat, and I happen to work at the urbact program, which is a European cooperation program that enables and finances cities to come together, to work together, and to develop solutions for the challenges they face at local level. So we work with networks of European cities and to which we also offer capacity building activities, trainings, and knowledge activities like this one. This webinar is part of our offer on different topics, and this topic today it is storytelling. So this webinar happens within the frame of the communication campaign for the call for action networks, which is open until 17th of June. And this means that you have still some time to write good applications to submit by this date of 17th of June. And for this also reason, and within this frame, we have also developed a series of activities on storytelling. We started back in 2025 with a request from urbact cities coming to the urbact secretariat and telling us whether we can explore further how cities, city authorities, urban professionals can use really storytelling to drive change at local level. And back in 2025, we started this reflection with also assessing the needs of the cities, what were the main problems that they were facing when it comes to communicating on local projects or communicating with citizens, engaging them in local projects, or even how to engage elected officials or mayors in projects. So we had this needs assessment, but also then we continued the work on storytelling with specific webinars for cities, which are available online. And we just released yesterday a guide to urban storytelling for you, especially urban professionals and city representatives. So this is the context where we are at and why we organized this webinar. And what we hope with this webinar to do is we will hope that this will help you understand how evaluators, how assessors experience the applications that they read, that they have to score. And from this baseline of how assessors experience the applications that they read, we will then try to help you with avoiding common proposal writing mistakes. And also we will try to give you some tools for you to write stronger summaries and problem statements in particular. And we will be using storytelling to improve your applications. I just want to make just a quick parenthesis that this webinar, of course, will mainly build on the experience of evaluations within the urbact program. However, we do think that some of the elements that we're going to show you are cross-cutting across other EU funding programs. So we think that this webinar will help you also improve your writing skills also for other applications for other EU funded programs. And I wanted also, before we deep really into the agenda, I just want you to have a quick understanding of what you will be expecting this morning for the next 1 hour and a half. So we will first focus, we will start with the baseline. As I told you, we will start with a focus on the assessments. So we will bring to you the experience and comments from assessors, as we have been working with many assessors throughout the years. And for this, we have a special guest. We will also then, based on the assessment, then we will dive into hints and tips for your applications using storytelling. And we will end the webinar with the experience from a successful applicant city within urbact. So we have at least three more voices that from which you will hear from today. And throughout the webinar, I will invite you to write your questions in the chat, and we will be responding to these questions through the chat or orally. But just a kind reminder, just when people will be speaking, perhaps avoid sending right away the questions, but we will have dedicated question and answer moment after each intervention. Also, just to tell you before we start that this recording is this webinar is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be available just after the webinar. They will be available on the urbact website under the Get Involved page, but also under the storytelling page. And with no further ado, I would like also to see who is in the room today with us. So I'm going to launch three questions for you through Zoom. So it will be easy and quick for all of us. So the first question is about where you come from, which organization you represent. So, are you a representative of a local, regional, or national authority? Are you an urban expert, consultant, or representing a small, medium-sized enterprise? Are you a representative of an EU institution or international institution, researcher or teacher at the university, communication professional, or you represent another sector? Continue. Yes, we are around 100 people right now, so I'm giving a few more seconds for all of you to respond. And I'm going then to share the results so you can see them. I'm just waiting a few more seconds. There is already a big tendency about who is in the room. All right, I see that still some people haven't responded to the question, but I'm going to stop it here and I'm going to share the results. So you can see already that most of you represent local or regional or national authorities, and few of you are also coming from the private sector. You can be experts or consultants, probably working on urban affairs. All right, let's move on. Let's move on now with the second question, which is, are you currently involved in an application for an urbact action network? Yes or no? Are you currently involved in an application for an urbact action network? It might be that you are involved as lead partner or project partner. If this is the case, then you should answer yes. If not at all, then no. All right. I'm going to stop here a few more seconds. I'm sharing the results. So most of you come from, actually, you are involved in an application for an urbact action network, but also we have people who are not. So that's really good. And the last question I have for you is this one. All right, so just let me close first this one. All right. So the third question is, what do you think when you have to write an application? Oh gosh, not again. I'll copy paste some text from previous successful applications. I wish somebody else could write it for me. Hello, Gemini. Hello, ChatGPT. I can't wait to write this application. Are you so excited that you can't wait to write an application? Let us see. Oh gosh, not again an application. I'll copy paste some text from previous successful applications. I wish somebody else could write it for me. Hello, Gemini. Hello, ChatGPT. I can't wait to write this application. So let's see. I'll give you a few more seconds. Few more seconds. All right, let me share the results with you. So there's a lot of hello Gemini, hello ChatGPT. We are going to go we are going to deal with this issue perhaps. Um, there are some excited people about writing applications. That's really good. And of course, there's also this feeling of, oh, not again an application because it takes time. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of organization, especially if it's about a consortium. And also, some of you think that you will copy paste some text from previous successful applications. All right, very good. So, this gives us an idea about who you are and what are your habits. So, let's now go into the real thing now with our agenda. I'm going to bring my slides back and just 1 second to share again my screen. Right. And here we go. So I'm going now to present you Clémentine Gravier, who is the head of unit for networks and capacity building at the urbact secretariat. So Clémentine has been working for the secretariat for 11 years now. And she has also been always been in this unit of networks. So she has seen many applications passing by over the years, and she has also been involved in many uh, meetings with assessors when it comes to urbact application forms. But also Clementine has been, while Clementine is not an assessor for urbact application forms, she's also an assessor for other EU-funded projects like Erasmus+. So I'm very happy to have you with us, Clementine. So I count on you to give us insights about what evaluators are looking for.
Thank you, Jenny, and good morning, everyone. So I thought that we would first start to just explain how assessment works for the URBAC program. So we, like Jenny already mentioned, we are not the one. The secretariat is not the one assessing the project. This is always done by what we call an external assessment panel. So there are some external experts being selected. We are doing that at the moment. There are experts in sustainable urban development, on EU priorities, EU funding. So all any topic that is related to your back project. And this external assessment panel is composed of a few experts and a chair, who is also an expert. Once we receive the application, so for the call that we have currently open, it will be 17th of June. We will the secretariat, so we will proceed with so there is someone saying that is an echo. I mean, I am on my side, the sound is good, so I don't know. And then so we are going to process with eligibility matter. So we are checking that, and if everything is fine, if the project is eligible, it goes to assessment, and so we give the application to read to external experts. Each application is read by two experts individually. So everyone goes on their side and they read the applications. Then we have what we call a consensus meeting. So all the experts and the chair come together. And this is a meeting that also the secretariat, the URBAC secretariat is joining and organizing. So all the experts are coming together, and we go through the evaluation that have been done. Most of the time, experts agree on their assessment. I mean, it's just fine tuning because they have, like not the same way of scoring the application. But most of the time, the assessors agree. When there is a strong disagreement on one application, we really spend more time on it, and we see where the disagreements are where is coming from, and we find an agreement, a consensus. And so at the end, the external assessment panel makes a final ranking of all the applications that they have reviewed. And the managing authority, so in our case, it's France is the managing authority of the urbact program. They take the ranking and propose the project, some project out of this ranking to what we call the monitoring committee. The monitoring committee, it's the group of member states and states that are partner and member of the urbact program. They come together and they approve, they discuss and they approve at the end the project. So in a few words, this is how it goes from the submission of application until the approval of the project. So just I also wanted to say that for those of you, because I think many of you are interested in the current call for action networks, the focus of the current call is slightly different. So if you have already taken part in urbact applications, this one is different. So we are not going to focus on the transfer of good practices or the design of action. This call is really about implementation of actions. So this is why we ask for applicants to already have local strategies and action plans in place. And obviously, in the application form, it will be very important to explain what these strategies are or what these action plans are. So, what are the priorities at local level? Which priority does the strategy or the local action plan answer to? What is the rationale? How basically has been the process to draft this strategy or action plan, and what is their objective. So all in all, what's the story behind this strategy and action plan? This is going to be really important for this call, and this is what one of the main things that the assessor will look at. And so I just wanted as well to say a few words on the assessors, because having taken part to several external assessment panel meeting, I just wanted to also give you a feedback of what evaluators notice when they assess. So if I can have the next slide, please. Yes. So assessors will get a bit skeptical, or they will start wondering. Or they get skeptical about an application when there is a poor use of AI. So I'm not speaking of the use of AI, artificial intelligence, but really the poor use. This is something that you really notice very quickly if AI has not been used in a smart way. And I think my colleagues are going to speak about that later on. But sometimes AI use can end up in very shallow and empty paragraphs. So for it to be good, you have to give a bit of meat, but this can be quite poorly used, and this you notice immediately. What an assessor will also notice is that if several people have been involved in the drafting of the application, and if, for instance, if there is a change of tone, because, for instance, one paragraph will be very descriptive of the answer to a question, will be very descriptive, and then there will be a lot of indicators, bullet point for another question. So if like the overall application, you have a abrupt change of tone, this you can notice, and you know that several people have worked on their side on the application, but there was not like a command building, or the narrative is not fluid, basically. What we notice as well is when there are a lot of repetitions. So you know, like you have different questions, but sometimes the same text or like similar text is used to answer the different questions, and as well the level of commitment of partners. You can feel if the project has been built in common with the partners of the network or not. And then like assessor can get very excited about projects. Sometimes there are very heated discussion during these consensus meetings, and they get excited when it's an interesting topic, you know, something that is added value, that is really like sometimes a bit new, but it doesn't have to be new, but sometimes like very you get like an interesting topic. As well, when there is a nice and varied partnership, when the objectives are clear, and basically when the application is structured and when the reading is smooth. This is very important. When you are reading a story, basically, this makes the reading and the assessment very pleasant, and this helps definitely to gain some point. So what sometimes, you know, like as well, there can be some hesitation about project, because sometimes you can wonder if the project are good or just well written. And so here, this is really important for the applicants to put forward the added value and the relevance and the coherence of the proposal. So is it just well written, you know, like a good story, but what is behind? So it's also, even if you write well, it's also very important to explain what your project is bringing. Also, like I said, also as well before, you know, when there is a change of tone, sometimes as well you can have a part that is very well written, and sometimes and another part where it's not well written, and then you say, okay, it's a bit then unbalanced, and as well it has an impact on the assessment. Sometimes you have great proposal, or you feel that you have great project, but they are not precise enough. For instance, you like a project will say, we will do that and that and that, but they don't say how. And the point is not like to read pages and pages, but to be precise and to really like give detail on what the objective and the flow of the project, what is intending with the project. And also, I think I would, and I would finish with that, but I would say really avoid repetition, avoid too many numbers. You should be able to provide information in a concise way, and this is already what makes your application stand out from others. Because basically, even if your proposal is great, sometimes if you know, like it's less well written than another, then it may not make the cut, and another one is going to make, because it's a competition in the end. So I think that's it from me at the moment, Jenny.
Thank you, Clementine. We do have a question at least, and I also have a few questions for you, Clementine. Um, so you mentioned the poor use of artificial intelligence. And I mean, it would be good that we elaborate already a bit now, even though we have also a specific slide on this just afterwards. What do you mean with poor use? Can you give us a bit some examples?
Yeah, so you sometimes like as assessor, you will meet application that where you have paragraphs where at the end of you read them, and then you say, okay, this is empty, you know, this is very generic. You have nice words, but then it doesn't bring you a lot of information. And I think here, I mean, I guess you are going to elaborate on that, but I think the problem there is that, like, in order to use AI in a smart way, it's not like you should not like just ask a question, say, okay, I have this question to please, like you ask ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, please ask me a paragraph on the added value of my project. And if you just stop there, then the answer will lack meat. If on the other hand, you write already a paragraph and then you give it to ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever to rephrase it or to be more impactful and that kind of thing, then this will be much better. And this is where this is going to be well used. But sometimes you read applications that are basically just empty words and you feel that there is nothing, it's like a bit like an empty shell and there is nothing, there is not much behind.
In a way, you feel a bit the emptiness and I mean the tasteless of ChatGPT or Gemini because they're very generic and they don't really show any commitment or engagement with the project itself, actually. Because you can also ask ChatGPT or Gemini to write a summary how this network, for example, how this project corresponds to the EU values or to the EU objectives or the objectives of urbact. And then, I mean, they will find the responses, but still it's very generic. It doesn't really show the intervention logic why this makes sense for the project. So I think here's the thing is that the artificial intelligence software so far they are not so intelligent enough to make this kind of intervention logic with your project and the wider framework. So they are very generic and yeah, really tasteless. I mean, we can really understand when there is there the weight has been put on the responses of artificial intelligence rather than there is an internal thinking of how exactly the project corresponds to something, for example, how the project is described. It's not the same thing when this is described by a human. All right. I mean, we do have another slide on artificial intelligence just afterwards. I propose that we move on. I see that there are questions in the chat about eligibility of some or some technical questions about the call for action networks. We are not going to take them now. So for these questions, please send a direct message to an@urbact.eu. I'm going to send you through the chat the email address so you can direct all these questions to the relevant colleagues. Now we're just going to focus on application forms and storytelling. So
And
for
Jenny,
this, yeah,
can I
Clementine.
just I mean, because just for the people who are like asking a technical question, there are a lot of material already available on the page of the call because you have all the recordings from the past sessions. Like question and answers. The next session is going to take place on the 12th of June, if I'm not mistaken. So like, please have a look at there. Write email to an@urbact.eu and we'll get back to you. If I just can like say one word of one sentence of conclusion, I think really what makes the difference between an application that will go through I mean make it and make the cut and the one that are not, it's also like you need to feel the heart in the application. You need to feel that people are convinced by what they are doing, that they really, because basically what we want is like projects that are going to make a change. And if you can feel that, even if it's not perfectly written, but if you can feel that, then this makes a lot of difference. And even assessors, they will want to fight as well, for the project to go through. So
And,
voilà.
and in a way, Clementine, there is also, I think, evaluators are quite sensitive on this because when we understand that there is that the application actually is based on a text that is generated by artificial intelligence, then there is the question that the evaluators ask themselves whether there is a real commitment from the city to do this project actually. So, I mean, the commitment as a human that you will put on an application form will surely pay off during the assessment process. So, yeah, the fact that we understand that a text, an application form has been really fed in by an artificial intelligence asks us as evaluators, because I have been also evaluating some EU-funded application form projects, asks the question about whether there is a real commitment at local level. And also, I want to also to come back to you, Clementine, when you were speaking about precision. And so
Mm.
the idea again is not to have like too many details and have like 50 pages of application, but to be precise and to show us that you know what you want to do with the project.
Mm. And maybe one last word, I promise. It's as well, just a point that uh, always for applicants to keep in mind is the fact that assessors are not in their head. And so you basically what they are going to assess is what is on paper. So they are not going to look for you on doing in the internet. They don't have the time often, they have a lot of projects to assess. So really they stick to the applications. And so what is there is what is good. So the presentation is really important. And the more precise you will be, the better it will be. Again, without writing thousands of words and so on, you just need to be detailed enough and precise, using the right word and to well describe what you have in mind.
And since we're talking about presentation of application forms, I'm going to transition now and go to Brian Marinan, who is an urbact expert, but also assessor himself, not of urbact application forms, but of other EU-funded projects. And with Brian and also Sandra Rainero, another urbact expert, we have been working since 2025 on all these storytelling activities I've been telling you about. And the guide I showed you in the beginning has been also edited with the help of Brian and Sandra. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Brian, to guide us through some hints and storytelling techniques that can help us with writing applications.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. I'm really excited to talk to everyone. And I know what it's like. So I'm not just evaluating applications around Europe, I also write them for different things. So I know what it feels like right now. I know it's a busy time. You're trying to involve a lot of people in the writing process. You're trying to coordinate the partners. You have a lot of deadlines. You have a lot of moving parts. And so taking the time to come join us in this session, I really appreciate that. And I see my job today as making the evaluator's job really hard. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. And to do that, I want to make it very practical. So this webinar is not about you becoming a professional storyteller. It's not about marketing language. It's not about making things sound dramatic or theatrical. It's about helping you understand where the evaluators are coming from and helping those evaluators then to understand your proposal quickly, clearly, confidently, because in reality, that's what applications, most applications contain very strong ideas. And that's not necessarily the challenge. The problem is that the evaluators struggle to quickly understand what the problem really is, why it matters, what's at stake, and then why this network is the right response to that. So one of the things we'll be coming back to repeatedly today is strong applications can reduce the cognitive effort of the evaluators. And we're going to help you hopefully create a flow that works naturally through the application. Now, I would love this to be interactive, so please put the questions in the chat, and I would love to pop back and forth to them. I do have the chat in my corner here, so I can see them coming up real time. So I'll come back to those, and we'll try and hold them during the session. And then towards the end, I'm going to be joined by Komotini, who are going to tell us a little bit about their application journey and their wider journey with urbact, and hopefully give you an opportunity to learn from someone who's been through it before you, and what they learned from that process as well. So what makes an application memorable in the context of urbact, or perhaps any application? And I think it tends to, you need to start thinking about what tends to stay with the evaluators after they finish reading the application. So it normally starts with a very clear and urgent problem. So when evaluators are reading this, they can immediately picture what's wrong, who's affected by that, and why this issue really matters. And something important happens psychologically then, because an evaluator is a human, not a computer, and they stop trying to decode the application and they start engaging with it when they understand, oh, that's the context that we're working in. That's the person. I can imagine that person being affected by this, and here's how they're being affected by it. And so concrete examples are really hugely important here. We're looking at, a named neighborhood, a visible challenge, a very specific consequence, and kind of a local tension that's quite recognizable in that context. And those details really help to build trust quickly with the evaluator. They understand that you understand the context that you're working in, and that this is embedded in something that is very real, um, and not just a project that sounds good, that is trendy, or is going after something that isn't necessarily tied to something that's linked to local challenges within your network. And at the heart of that, you have to think in terms of your application. Could this have been written by any city in Europe, or is it distinctly linked to ours and our partner cities? They need to belong specifically to that place, and I need to feel that as an evaluator. So when the applications naturally follow a pattern, which we're going to discuss, we want to be able to bring an evaluator on that journey. And you gotta remember that evaluators are reading these things under time pressure. They are trying to get through quite a bit of information in often a relatively short period of time so that we can get responses back to you in a fair manner. So clarity isn't just a writing issue, it's actually a strategic advantage in this context. And the easier your application is to follow, the more credible and convincing it sounds in that context. So that brings us to a very important question of what do we actually mean when we talk about storytelling in this context? So in the next slide, we talk about what storytelling means in kind of most applications. I think sometimes the word storytelling can make people slightly uncomfortable in an EU funding context because people worry about it becoming emotional or promotional or I don't know, dramatic. But actually, good storytelling is very practical normally, and it's all about helping someone to understand something complicated without making them work too hard to gather that understanding. So it's about making those challenges tangible. It's about helping those evaluators to understand what the issue is, why it matters, why now matters, it's under time pressure, and why your city is credible in that context, and why your network is credible in that context. So it also creates momentum. We are all about feeling where the proposal is going, the logic becomes easy to follow, and more importantly, the storytelling creates coherence across all of that. So what we're looking to do is that the evaluator never has to stop and ask, why are you telling me this? I'm not understanding where this fits. It should be pretty logical and on a step, and each paragraph connects logically to the next, even if that's across different sections that you're telling the story in parts. And actually, the application form has been designed to enable you to do that. Um, but it's very much telling that story using evidence and giving that evidence more power because the evaluator understands why that evidence matters. And so to make that practical, we use a very simple structure called the urbact story bridge. And so this is a context that makes everything a little bit easier to kind of frame up. Um, we the structure is useful because it kind of prevents applications from becoming fragmented. And a very common application or a common issue in weaker applications is that they jump too quickly into activities and ambitions before the evaluator fully understands the challenge. So the first step is always grounding the evaluator in the current reality. So what's happening right now? What's daily life like in your cities? What's the status quo? We're not necessarily diagnosing the problem yet. You're describing the context of where that problem sits. The next step is you need to you're thinking about who's actually being affected by this. This isn't a municipality problem. You have to point out who the audience is for what you're trying to change. Whose daily lives are affected by this? And where do they fit within that city context? Why does it matter to them? And that's where you can start to bring in the emotion um, and think about the next bit, which is where the tension exists. So what's the actual problem? And this is the diagnosis piece. So we've given you the context. We can understand who is affected by this. And then we're now diagnosing what is the audience, or sorry, what are the visible impacts for this? How do you see, hear, and feel this in the city? We can then move on to the consequences. What happens if nothing changes? Why does it matter now? You could just stay with the status quo, and that's fine. It continues to deteriorate, or you lose the opportunity that you're thinking about. Or, and this is where we're almost halfway through, get to introduce the solution. And that's very much, this is the new potential way that we could go. This is the new direction. And this is where the urgency starts to emerge and where you introduce the network and the role that this will have in the choice of the future direction for the cities in that network. That will lead us on to the transformation. And that's the transformation that will take place if the network becomes active and that people are engaging with it, and the activities that are a part of that, we can actually go into a little bit more detail there. Next, you're talking about how people emotionally engage with that. So what is the actual the ingredients that we're looking for that kind of bring the people along with this? And Urbact is all about integrated development. So we're very much looking for that emotional resonance as part of this. And really think about how will it change people's lives? And then you are left with that new normal. What is the new daily life in the city? And this network, in essence, becomes the bridge from your starting point to this future new normal. So this is the journey that we hope we're bringing people on over the course of this context. And if you can get this kind of feeling across your application, we're not saying that this needs to be in every section because we are conscious of word count, but think about these elements and are you getting these in? Are you describing this story to the evaluator? Can they start to understand that? Um, and that will be really valuable to the evaluator and understanding the context of where you're coming from. Um, remember, if you can follow this, something interesting happens. They stop noticing the structure itself, and they actually just engage with the application because it feels logical. It feels easy to read. It feels coherent. Now, many applications unintentionally break the flow of that because of a few common writing mistakes. So I did want to touch on those and maybe just briefly go through some of those areas. One of the things that evaluators often say, and I often feel, is that languages starts to sound extremely familiar. Now we'll touch again on this in AI, but if you're using too much jargon, it can actually create distance between you and the other person. Remember, they don't necessarily understand um, the jargon that would be used in, say, a water application versus a gender application versus an education application. And each of those industries have their own jargon, and you need to pull back and actually get people who aren't in that space to read your application so that they can give you, "Ooh, I'm not sure what this bit means." Um, don't fall into the trap of meaning that or of thinking that complicated writing sounds more professional. Actually, simplicity works better, and making evaluators work harder doesn't necessarily work in your benefit. None of us wants to work harder. Um, Passive voice is a very common issue. You end up with sentences where nobody kind of appears responsible for anything. So, when you say something like, there'll be improved stakeholder coordination, or improved stakeholder coordination will be facilitated. It sounds very vague and distant. Whereas if you can say something like the municipality will create a shared coordination group between schools, cultural organizations, tourism actors, it immediately sounds kind of clearer, much more accountable, and that's what we're looking for in this context. Confidence that, who's going to be delivering on this and how. Vague claims, you need to be careful of. We want everything to be embedded in evidence. And again, we'll relate that back to AI later. And then walls of text are always difficult to read. We all know this, but also walls of bullet points are equally difficult to read because it sounds like you're trying to emphasize everything. So be careful, try to bring a bit of variety into the structure to bring freshness to it. The last piece, and I think I've discussed that pretty clearly in the bit before, is explaining the solutions before you've gotten the person to understand the challenge clearly. So if the urgency isn't clear, the activities just won't feel meaningful in the context that you're giving them across. So try and really deeply understand the problem you're trying to get across, and how do you get that to a person who isn't in your context to understand that context. So the next piece is, I'm conscious that there are a lot of people going to be contributing to these applications. You're going to have policy teams, perhaps, and external partners, hopefully. You should. Thematic experts. You're going to have maybe communication staff or consultants or, politicians or political stakeholders. And that's completely normal, right? We want lots of people involved in this process because that's where the integration comes, that's where the stakeholder engagement comes from the very start. It's not, oh, we'll start engaging stakeholders once we get the network. You want to be engaging people now in the vision of that future. And you get a diversity of thought into your application. That's really important. You understand the challenge from different perspectives then, and it deepens your own understanding before you even apply. So that's amazing. But one of the risks is that the application starts sounding like multiple different people have written parts of it. And so you might get repeated information across the application. You might get changes in tone. terminology might be used a little bit more inconsistently, and you get kind of uneven levels of clarity because one is a little bit more complex and another is perhaps a little bit clearer and easier to read. So we would suggest that whilst you will have multiple different contributors, have one person take responsibility for the tone, for the consistency, the rhythm, the clarity, the overall narrative flow. Now, we're not saying one person should write it. That's absolutely not what I'm saying here, because we want lots of people engaged. But one person take responsibility for the sound and the feel. I think that's a good idea. And from an evaluator perspective, you feel like it has a nice kind of consistent narrative voice. You feel the confidence that that gives you. And it's a nice thing then to kind of do that, read the application before submission, making sure that when you're reading it aloud, it actually sounds like something you would say rather than just complex language that you're writing. So let's go into a few examples. And I want to touch, first of all, we're going to do a few of the sections. And the first one we're going to touch on is the summary. And the summary is really important because it functions as your elevator pitch for the entire document. We often, as evaluators and as humans, form our impressions surprisingly early. So the summary has a lot of work to do very quickly. And a strong summary usually does four things. It identifies the problem. It explains why the issue matters. It introduces the urgency. Why now? Why do we need a network this time, not in, I don't know, a year or two's time? And then why is this network a credible response to what we've just introduced? Now, we recognize that character limits are pretty tight. You only have a certain amount of text. And sometimes well, no, it's always a challenge, but it also actually can be useful, right? Because they force discipline, and discipline often improves your clarity. So we find that when you have too much space, you perhaps just go into too many ambitions for the network. And strong summaries kind of focus on the central tension and explain that really clearly. So think about it from the context of if someone would only read the summary, would they understand the challenge, the stakes, and why this network matters? And if you can do that, that would be amazing. So we're going to compare two examples, and I'm going to ask you which you prefer in that context. And I'm going to use my hometown, my city, as an example. So I live in a place called Cove. That's the way it's pronounced, Cove, in Cork, in Ireland. And it is an island. In fact, it's on an island called the Great Island. And some of you may know it because it was the last place that the Titanic stopped before its ill-fated journey around the world. But it's where I have lived for the past few years. And I'm going to introduce two potential summaries for a potential application from Cove. So in Cove, historic docklands that were once connecting the town to the world are increasingly disconnected from everyday community life. Across Europe, maritime cities face similar challenges: aging waterfronts, disappearing maritime skills, and younger generations with little connection to local heritage. Mer, or Mother Sea, will help cities reactivate maritime identity through culture, tourism, education, and public space renewal. So that's one. And then the second one is maritime heritage is an important resource for many European coastal cities. Mer will create opportunities for partner municipalities to collaborate in addressing the challenges related to heritage preservation, tourism development, sustainable urban regeneration through cooperation, knowledge exchange, and stakeholder engagement activities. So there are two examples, and I would love for you all to pick which one in the poll that's coming up you would like to represent if you were doing this application. Which do you feel is better fit? Okay, so we're taking a few. And then if you want to throw a comment or two into the chat around why you picked one versus the other, I'd love to see that also. Um, and we'll see now. So we'll give you, I think we have,
Let's give them a few
uh,
more seconds because still, I mean, we have people not being so active for the poll. So let's wait
that's
a
no
few more
problem.
seconds.
Super.
But there is a tendency already, Brian. I can see that I will share the results in a while.
Okay, fantastic.
There is a tendency, yeah.
Okay, so and do put something in the chat. We want to see why you're thinking, why you voted what you did. Um,
And so you can see the results
there's our
now.
response. Okay, so we do have a level of balance, but we've two-thirds, one-third. And I can see why you're going for both. I did not want to put one that was much better than another or one that felt stronger or that was very distinctive. So I can see why people are picking both. That's good. I'm happy with that. I would lean towards the first one like the rest of the audience, I think, because it is grounded in a location. I think you understand that context much more. And the second one, I feel like you're going into the solution perhaps before you understand the challenge. So we know that maritime heritage is an important resource, but it doesn't necessarily describe what the challenge is. What's the problem here that we're actually trying to fix with this network? And I think understanding that could be really useful to presenting the rest of the application. That said, not dealing as much with the problem gave me more time to talk more about the solution. And I can see why you would pick the second one in that context. So do feel free, if that's what you were thinking, that I'm getting more around what heritage preservation and tourism development and sustainable urban regeneration. These are all lovely things to have as part of a network, but we're not understanding why they're important in the context of this network. Okay, so that's my first one. We'll do a couple more of these on different sections. So the second one is around policy challenge. Now, this section is where you can really build your argument. And the structure here becomes quite important. So think about our bridge in the context of how are we creating a hook that grabs people's attention at the start? How are we providing them that context? Think about the evidence you can build here. So what is um, the thing that grounds the issue locally? What is the data that you can use to strengthen your argument and explain why why this really matters, why those stakes matter in the context of your city, um, and then why your city as well plays to contribute and why the network together actually creates something that's better than a city doing this on its own. You want that network to come together and improve it for each other just as much as implementing in parallel. That's not what urbact is about. So avoid overloading the evaluator with too much information, but context is really important and it should support the story, not bury it in that context. So keep the evaluator moving forward and each paragraph should kind of deepen that understanding rather than repeating the same point in different language. So again, let's go on to a couple of examples. And here I have the Mer network back again. And maritime heritage is an important asset for many European coastal cities and represents significant opportunities for tourism and culture and economic development. However, many municipalities face challenges related to preservation and promotion of maritime heritage within changing urban environments. Mer aims to support the cooperation between cities in order to exchange good practices and improve policy approaches related to maritime valorization, stakeholder engagement, sustainable tourism, and integrated urban development. So that's one example. The second one is historic harbours and docklands often remain visually attractive, but economically fragile and socially underused outside tourism periods. Cove has already begun testing new approaches through local festivals, school programs, and small-scale public space initiatives linked to maritime culture, such as shanty singing. However, the city lacks structured methods for connecting these isolated activities into a long-term regeneration strategy. Mayor will allow Cove and partner cities to explore how maritime heritage can actively support inclusion, learning, cultural participation, and sustainable waterfront renewal. So once again, we're going to ask you to pick which of these two you would lean to if it was your application. Here we go. So select your option there now. Move through this. I think we're getting our answers a little bit faster this time, which is amazing. Thank you for doing that. Again, if you want to put a thought on the chat, that would be fantastic. Axel, I see your comment on the last one, the well-spaced and well-structured. I like that idea. And then for this one, the first is not too centered and focused towards the leader. And then this in example 2. So that was a question for the last one, Frederica. I get you. I understand where you're coming from. Example 2, we feel the heart of the writer, the feeling helps us to engage in the project. And I think everyone is picking that because we have a pretty comprehensive response towards example 2 this time around. So 80%, 86% have selected example 2. And I think we are pretty clear that that's the one we all prefer. And I would agree. We have, I guess, a context here, but we also have very grounded actions that give confidence that, excuse me, that someone already has ideas and that they want to put those ideas in place. And so there's a structure that can go ahead and thoughts on that progression.
Even though this is also, again, I mean, I want to echo the message from a participant saying that it's for the previous example that it was very lead partner centered. The example 2 here is also very lead partner centered. So pay attention. I mean, we also try to have some of few things to show you that nothing is really perfect, but you should also pay attention not to have so many, because you're talking about networks, so not to have so much emphasis on a specific partner or on the lead partner, because otherwise it also can give the impression to the assessors that actually the network is very much lead partner centered, and that they don't really care about the other partners. So you have to find a balance of because you could very well in this policy context, we're now focusing on the policy context, you can say few words of each partner if you're going to put the policy context of each partner, but just then if you decide to do it, put all of them, not just the lead partner. This is an example of how you can do it. But it shouldn't just focus on one partner. It should be, really show that you're a collective player as a lead partner and that you bring everybody on the same level through this network.
That's exactly it. And I should clarify, so the word count for this section is significantly larger than this, or the character count. So this is probably a bit of an opener, too focused on Cove, absolutely. But we would expect this to be brought forward and talk about all the other partners as well to ensure that we're grounding this across the network. But we want to use practical examples, but you're absolutely right. Let's not make it all about Cove, even though I think the whole world should all be about Cove because I live here. Fantastic. Okay. Our next piece is around the local challenges. And so this is the section where the local specificity becomes really important. This is where the evaluators just start to feel the texture of the place, where we're getting those tensions, who's involved, what does the challenge look like in practice, and really getting kind of the visible actors, the examples, the kind of consequences, and the barriers that you're facing as well. So really think about that. Um, this is one area where I think generic language can hurt you quite a lot. It really has to feel like it's coming from these places. So, when you use phrases like we're going to improve social inclusion through integrated cooperative frameworks or something like that, which is very European frameworky language, but it kind of sounds a little bit empty sometimes. And the fear, again, if I were to touch on AI, I know we're going to talk about it again later, but that's the kind of language you often get from an AI response that knows how to use European language. Even if you've created a very solid prompt, it doesn't sound like it comes from you. So that's what we're looking for. We respond much more strongly when we can picture that challenge. We want to trust that detail and the authenticity of this. So let's go into another couple of examples. And I'm conscious of time, so I may not do a vote on this. But here, what I wanted to do was give a couple of things as well, where we're really looking at kind of here in the first example, I use kind of three key challenges that we're trying to pull out, and I'm really dragged those out to kind of talk about those specific issues. In in challenge two, it's probably slightly more vague or the example two, it's probably slightly more vague in terms of language. And you need to think about could this city or could each of the paragraphs in this section only apply to the cities within the network? So we wanted to be very tied into that. Now, the last piece we're going to look at, the last section in the thing, is the strategic framework. And this section is really about confidence. The evaluator wants to know, is the city moving forward? Is there institutional commitment? Are there structures in place? Is this realistic? Do I feel confident that they're actually going to deliver on the plan? And that's what you're going to do in this context. You want to look at what's already started, what partnerships already exist, what political or strategic commitments are already visible. We're not expecting perfection, absolutely not, but we want an element of momentum, that we're not starting from zero, that there's actually a drive behind this in the cities, in the network, to bring this forward. So we might skip the examples on this one, and I will summarize this piece by saying I would encourage you to ask yourself, can the evaluator picture the problem clearly? I think this is the most important test. If the challenge remains abstract after reading the application, the writing probably needs a revision. Are the stakes really explicit? Do you understand what matters? Does the text sound concrete, credible, evidence-backed? Or is it generic and interchangeable? If it could belong to any city, then it's not going to help you in a volume of applications from multiple other cities. So get someone outside the drafting team to read it and then ask them to explain it back to you. And if it doesn't capture exactly what you're trying to capture, then maybe you need a revision in your language. Now, briefly touch on AI. And I guess my challenge with AI when I'm evaluating is I immediately notice AI when I'm evaluating. Language changes. It sounds the same across every application. And it tends to remove that local specificity that is so important for urbact. Like it's really important that we actually engage in this context. And so it can be useful to kind of assess your language. It can be useful to reduce the jargon sometimes, shorten a few sentences, support with translation sometimes. But if you're getting it to structure the application, that's not a good place to be. And I have been through several different evaluation processes. It is the season for them right now, of late. And I can immediately tell when something's been done by AI because it kind of pulls it out of context. So be very specific about bringing it back into that local knowledge, local political reality, your partnerships, your tensions, your context. These things are irreplaceable. And that's what evaluators respond to. So use it as a tool, but do not use it to replace that thinking and that context. Super. So given that, I would suggest off the back of today, if you could think about this, if you could only remember 3 sentences from your proposal, what would they be? And maybe that's something that we ask Katerina in her presentation. So I am delighted to introduce Katerina from Komotini. I got to meet Katerina about this time last year at the City Festival, and I was delighted to meet her because I have a huge passion for the area that the city was involved in. So welcome, Katerina. You might unmute yourself and join us. And I would love to hear a little bit more about Komotini and what you came forward with last year.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jenny and Clementine for having us today. I'm Katerina Pascalidou. I am representing the city of Komotini and the whole team behind this effort. Komotini now is a lead partner to a transfer network, an urbact transfer network called Accessible Cities for All. And it was a good practice in the Wrocław Festival. This is how we began our
Super.
journey.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can I just chat first of all about accessibility? That's something that is quite abstract in terms of a term. So how did you think about how do we turn this into something that's really concrete, that's actionable, and that we can get across in an application?
Actually, for Komotini, accessibility means accessible public
You might just hold your
spaces.
mic a little bit higher, please.
Yes, I'm very sorry about it.
No problem.
Okay, can you hear me now clearly?
Yes.
All right. For Komotini, accessibility means accessible public spaces, it means accessible services, accessible information. So it was a long process, it has started many years ago, but even before the call for transfer networks. And the issue is that we realized that accessibility is a very broad and complex issue, as you said. So we had to translate it to something clearer, more concrete. How did we do it? We tried to break the concept down into practical and relatable modules. They are connected with everyday municipality reality. So instead of speaking about accessibility only in abstract terms, we explored how it affects governance, social inclusion, digital infrastructures, services, mobility, local economy. By structuring the topic into these interconnected dimensions, the proposal became more actionable and easier for partners and for evaluators also to grasp it.
Amazing. And when you think about that time when you were developing the application, what was the core challenge or story that you wanted to get across?
As my partners and my team members always say, there is a story behind. So our storyline and our main motto was simple and powerful. When something is accessible, it is accessible for everyone. So from this storyline and this motto, which is a powerful motto, became the central storyline also for the application. It guided all the project modules, it guided all the structures, and it provided clear step-by-step process. For example, from policy to co-design, when something is accessible, it is accessible for everyone. This was our storyline, and it was very helpful for us.
Lovely.
And we communicated it better with local actors and also with our partners.
Super. And I will say, if anyone in the audience has questions for Catalina as well, because this is your opportunity to grab that advice from someone who's been through it, please pop them in the chat and we'd be happy to come to them. And in that context of many people involved, I spoke earlier about different people being involved in an application process, the different contributors. How did you organize that process across the municipality? I know you had a bunch of other stakeholders involved, so how did that work out for you?
I think it all starts with people, and many municipalities will be highly related with this. But from lonely, overloaded personnel in a municipality, it takes a team. So as you can see, it's a long process also, but it really takes people who genuinely care about creating a project and the tangible results. So we try to first create ownership into the municipality, internally, and then we actively invited different stakeholder groups to contribute to this development of the proposal. But as you can feel it in other municipalities too, you shouldn't stick to yourselves and start brainstorming, start building a good group of people, a team that really cares for actual results. Because, for example, let me share this, maybe it's useful for other partners, for other proposals. It was very important for us to be a part of a previous urbact network. This is the second contributor, because then we had the chance to use the urbact local group that has many stakeholders like the university, NGOs. Besides the municipal staff and the team effort from inside, you need help from other stakeholders, and you can use any means you have available. Our mean was firstly the ULG group, the local group that we had already on place. And then we had a more participatory grounded approach there. We had real needs and needs assessment. You know, real needs can be really innovative. This is our clue.
And with that many people involved, then how did you make sure that it sounded like it was, you know, a coherent proposal that actually it came from one voice?
But this was a tricky one because we had seven more partners in our network, the project partners, and also, as I mentioned, the stakeholders that were all about the needs, the real needs, and the brainstorming. So from the beginning, we had to share a clear concept note with the partners and with our stakeholders. The concept note should establish a common understanding, and also the storyline that I mentioned. This was our hook for everyone, and actually the core concept and the storyline was also included in a questionnaire. We shared a questionnaire with all the partners, and then there were 5 drafts of the application, of course, and we shared the drafts with our partners. They reviewed. Wow. It is a long process, not that long, but it is a dynamic process. We needed it because accessibility should be rooted in real terms, and that's why our project, we think, was very powerful, and we hope it leaves something. So the process, yes, involved two phases, one with the stakeholders, one with the partners, and 5 drafts that were going like a ping pong on the lawn.
And when you have different audiences involved like that, I'm sure there was different people pushing for different angles, and that you should include different examples, or proposed something differently. So how did you decide what should be your priorities and the needs within the broader network?
Actually, it helped a lot that we had a clear structure with the 6 modules of the good practice. So it was already well structured, the concept was there, and every partner had to identify multiple barriers and multiple challenges in their city and how they picture themselves to scale up existing situation in their city while transferring all good practice because it was a transfer network. But at this point, of course, there were different local realities. There were different geographical aspects from our cities, from the partner cities. Despite that, we saw that there were many similarities across European cities. And this was the ground of our application. We figured out after, of course, 3 online meetings with our partners, and after the 5 drafts and the refinements, but we found a common ground that we didn't believe it could be that common. I mean, the problems are the same in terms of accessibility. They may have different levels, but they are at the same ground. So this was very helpful.
And given that, how did you show that there was actually a bit of momentum behind what you were building? The different people at different stages. So how, as a network, then do you frame that into a cohesive, we're ready to hit the ground running on this?
I think one point was important. The Accessibility Act was on 2024 to 2025. So we were already scratching on this and discussing on this. So the European momentum was there. And in terms of network momentum, always there are issues on accessibility. We just created and gave to every partner the space to picture the city reality in each model. So we had governance. Can you picture yourself in this model? So the momentum was like, forced a bit through these models, but not forced because it was an existing need for each partner city. If you understand what I mean. So
Absolutely.
It was created like that.
And if you had your time back again, what's the one thing you would change or spend more time on, or put that more emphasis on if you had your time back again, or will do for the next application?
I'm not sure because I think that again, as I feel about the urbact networks overall, it's highlighted this participatory approach. I think we worked on that a lot, and that's why it was so fruitful. There are not only well-written proposals; they should be rooted in real local realities. So I would recommend, and I would try it more to have even more local realities with, for example, a stakeholder in the next meetings, the municipality and one important stakeholder, depending on the theme. It will be very interesting, complicated, but very helpful.
Thank you very much, Katerina. Katerina, perhaps a final word before we end the meeting. And also, I invite the participants, if they have any questions for you, to ask them now through the chat. But since we talked a lot about artificial intelligence, tell us you described very well all this commitment that you had as personally, but also the city of Komotini with engaging the stakeholders and committing yourselves in writing the application, also with the partners. You said 3 online meetings with the partners to understand their needs and to put them into the application. You said there have been 5 drafts that you had to review, to rewrite, etc., before you submit. So in this process, did you use artificial intelligence? And if you did, how did you use it?
Yes, of course, we used artificial intelligence to the final refinements because you can see we built on existing initiatives. It's not that easy to use ChatGPT to write all your initiatives, all your local context. It's easy to have it right. Okay, Komotini is a beautiful city, north and east, but it cannot describe the local reality. So afterwards, we did the final refinements of the application with ChatGPT. For example, we had some partners in the partner section descriptions, and we refined that text to make it a better flow and to make it more to read, more easy to read for an evaluator. But otherwise, the core of the application was people, and then of course ChatGPT did its job to refine the grammar or the flow of the paragraphs.
Right. Yeah, especially, yeah, you used artificial intelligence mainly to proofread the text in English, since
Exactly.
you're not an English native speaker. So you used it mainly for these reasons. So we have two questions for you, Katerina, in the chat. So in total, with all these drafts, the consultations with the local stakeholders in Komotini, but also with the partners, how much time did it take you, given that we have 3 months within urbact, you have 3 months to apply for a network. How long did it take you after all?
Okay, after the festival, there were 3 months. I think it was launched already. So we started right away. But before that, we already were building a concept by ourselves. Then, from that point, yeah, approximately 3 months and 2 months with our partners. 3 months in total and two months with our partners, with
Right.
discussions and online meetings.
Yeah,
And
that's
the one last month was on fire, as you understand, because it was like emails, emails.
yeah. That's yeah. So it's really important. We have always said that if you are going to submit an application, start right away. As soon as the call is launched, start searching, start developing the concept. So very clear. And another question is how many people did work on the drafting of the application?
Okay, it was 3 people from the municipality. Uh, I'm talking about the writing,
The writing,
only the
yes.
writing. 3 people from the municipality staff and one external consultant who was mostly into the managerial working packages writing part and the budget no, drafting and calculating, so it would be correct.
Right. So you had three, actually, you have been three authors plus this external consultant
Exactly.
doing mainly the budget, the management part. And then you had it sent over to other stakeholders to review it, to give you comments, etc. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Katerina. We are at 11:33 already. I hope this was an insightful webinar for you all who stayed until now. Before you go, I just want to tell you that there is, I mean, whatever Brian presented, especially the story bridge, which is the real, the spine, the urban storytelling with the tension, with the choice, etc., is available with many, many more advices and hits in this guide, the guide to urban storytelling. So you have the link and you will have the possibility to really consult it and use it for the applications you are going to submit within Urban or without or beyond urbact. I would like to thank you very much for participating. Before you go, I just want to ask you to respond to a last poll about this webinar. So we evaluate ourselves too. So you will be the assessors right now, and tell us whether you have enjoyed this storytelling webinar, and especially whether your knowledge on storytelling for application has increased. Because it is based on your inputs that we are going to continue to propose this kind of webinars, or you make us, you tell us whether we need to improve or not. So please respond to this poll. And while you do so, I wish you a very good day today and a very good application forms for the future. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much, Katerina, for being here with us. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much, Brian, for all the expertise that you've brought us. And
My
thank you very
pleasure.
much, Clementine.
And you might just mention where the recordings will be, Jenny.
The
For the
recordings will be on the Get Involved page. So on the page where all the related information about the call is found. So you will find it under the links. In this afternoon, we will upload the slides and the recording, and you will find it under the Get Involved page.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.